welcome to In the World, a discussion of worldly topics from a Christian perspective. I'm Jaime Snyder, my co-host for today, usually behind the camera.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ken Coughlan. Don't get your hopes up. I'm not starting a regular part of the rotation, but one side effect of the holiday seasons is a lot of people are out of town. So we kind of switch roles. I've decided to come on camera today, and my lovely wife, Mary Kay, has agreed to take my job behind the camera. Thank you very much.
Well, it's good to have you.
Thank you very much. So we're going to do the same thing we always do, 3 stories. Let's start with the first one.
Great.
On December 22nd, about 1/4 of the federal government shut down after congressional leaders and President Trump had not agreed upon additional funding measures. The president insists upon any bill including $5.6 billion to start construction of a wall along the United States southern border. New Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, has called the wall immoral and has rejected any talk of including funding for it. On January 3rd, the newly elected Democratic majority in the House of Representatives passed a bill that included $1.3 billion for fencing along the border and $300 million for other border security items that are not part of a physical barrier. Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, however, has stated that he will not bring any bill from the House to a vote in the Senate if it does not include funding for the border wall. For his part, President Trump has indicated that in exchange for wall funding, he would be willing to reinstate the Deferred Action on Childhood Arrivals program, granting protections to people who arrived in the country illegally as children. However, as of the date of our filming, Democratic leaders have not indicated that they were willing to consider this option. Overall, about 800,000 federal workers have been affected by the shutdown, all going without paychecks, and some being required to continue working without getting paid. A lot to talk about, and I guess when I first looked at this story, the first thought that occurred to me is there's certain things that we should all be able to agree upon, but unfortunately, I don't think we can't, or I don't think we can, rather. The first thing that occurred to me is, I guess there's 2 parts to this. There's the wall, which is obviously the sticking point, at least that's the way it's being portrayed in the media. And there's the people that are out of work. And when I first thought about it, it's like we should all be able to agree upon one thing, that the mere fact of building a wall along your border is not per se racist in my mind. Although I think it's portrayed that way as a lot of the time. But if you've got, the way I look at it is if you've got a border that you have an illegal immigration problem on, then trying to do something to stem that illegal immigration problem is not per se a statement against the race of the people who are coming in. If you are willing to let people from those countries come in through legal methods, through asylum or what have you, then merely trying to keep people out who aren't going that route from those countries is not, you're not making a distinction based upon race, you're making a distinction based upon how they're coming into the country. And so that's kind of one aspect to the story. Now, I think that's a legitimate conversation to have, and I'm not an economist. I'm not a politician. I don't pretend to be. If people want to talk about the cost of the wall versus its efficacy, well, okay, then there's a conversation worth having, and I'd agree. But I think we should try to avoid attaching, labels to people, like bigotry, racism, things like that, rather than addressing the merits of the issue.
Well, there's such an emotional element that comes along with this discussion, and especially when you throw in the shutdown and people being out of work or being, their pay being withheld. And so there's definitely emotional tie that comes along with both parts of the conversation. The wall is absolutely something that we need. And President Trump tweeted something humorous last week where he talked about the Obamas building a wall around their home in Washington, D.C., which they need it for their safety, and that's exactly why the Americans need a wall, to protect our safety. You're welcome to come to our country and be here among legal means and be a productive member of society, but we obviously need to have security on our borders, and it's becoming more and more evident as we continue to see these crimes, occur along the border sector. It's unfortunate that the government shutdown has to go along with this conversation, but I think it was the only way it was actually going to happen, because the continued bad behavior of our congressional leaders is always in the forefront.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking of too. And I think as Christians, we need to be mindful of the fact that, hey, there are 800,000 people that aren't getting paid as a result of this, and we certainly need to be sympathetic for that. And I don't think any conversation about this can talk about it without taking that into consideration and asking what's the right solution. And I guess maybe it's more of an indictment of the way our politics have gotten. But I read the other day something along the lines of, like, I don't want to say it was Nancy Pelosi, but I think it was Nancy Pelosi. apologize if I'm wrong about that, basically saying, oh, let's just pass a funding bill and not worry about the wall, and we'll continue to talk about the wall later. But if history teaches us anything, it doesn't happen.
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. And so I don't know, what the solution is other than trying to get people in Washington to have a heart to actually, try to, talk to each other about these issues legitimately, so it doesn't have to come to this point. But honestly, the way the system is right now, I question if there's any other way. I mean, if you don't do it now, when are you realistically expecting people to have this conversation?
Well, and hopefully this will, bring up this conversation in the people that are affected by the shutdown to go to their leaders and say, this has to happen so that my life can come back to normal.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to story number 2.
The Reverend Greta Vosper, a minister with the United Church of Canada, is being permitted to continue to lead West Hill United Church in Toronto despite openly professing her atheism. Vosper was ordained in 1993 and has led West Hill since 1997. She had frequently and openly preached that she did not believe the Bible was the authoritative word of God. But in 2001, she decided to come out about her atheism during one of her sermons. She was prepared to be fired, but instead found that members of the liberal congregation wanted her to stay on. From that point on, rather than preach about God and Jesus, she chose to speak on themes such as love, compassion, and beauty. Then in 2015, she wrote an open letter to the head of her denomination, claiming that belief in God motivates people to do bad things, including mass shootings. As a result, she was brought up for review, and in a split decision was found to be unsuitable for ordained ministry. However, she was allowed to keep her position with West Hill pending a future heresy trial. Prior to the trial, she reached a confidential settlement with the denomination and is now being permitted to keep her place in the pulpit.
Sometimes you just gotta laugh.
You do. I mean, honestly, there's so many things wrong with this story. First of all, why does she want to stay in the pulpit if she doesn't believe in God? And if you want to preach about beauty and love and peace, that's great. Go to the coffee shop. That's not. I mean, those are all part of messages that should come from the pulpit, but not from someone that doesn't believe in God.
Yeah, I think the same thing, and I see this phenomenon a lot in society today. For some reason, is people that want to, for some reason, to cling to the label Christian. And this is obviously an extreme example,
right?
But their beliefs and what they're teaching bear virtually no resemblance to historical Christianity. And I guess I just don't get it. It's like if that's what you want to teach and that's what you want to preach, fine, go for it. But why do you feel the need to continue to put yourself and do this in the environment of something that's claiming to be a Christian church?
Right. Why would you even want to be around that kind of environment? And shame on her flock for following, because why in the world are you coming to church to hear from somebody that doesn't want to talk about God?
Oh, I think that illustrates a danger we all have too sometimes. I'm not going to go into details here, but I had an issue in my past with a church I used to belong to where we had a pastor who did something very wrong, and it did definitely make him unsuitable to continue in the pulpit. But because people made these personal attachments, there was a good portion of the congregation that said, "Oh, why can't we just keep him on?" Oh, and it's kind of like, well, no, we can love, we can support, we can forgive,
sure.
But that's a different question. That's different from saying he should continue to be our spiritual leader, right? And so, I mean, now he was not professing an atheism or anything like that. I don't want to say that, But yeah, it just makes me wonder why in that environment. And the other thing I'll tell you that stuck out to me about this story is the open letter that she wrote to the head of her head of her denomination, and it was my understanding it was in the setting of the Charlie Hebdo shootings, sure. And she basically was saying, well, belief in God per se leads people to do things like this. And I, as an apologist, I see this all the time. This is a repeated tagline that you see a lot of skeptics and atheists kind of make, and it's just not true. I mean, people tend to overgeneralize. Are there religious groups that commit violent acts? Absolutely. But I think what we need to do is we need to look at the teachings of the founder of whatever, because you just want to say religion or belief in God. Think about everything you're sweeping in under that title. And so look at the actual teachings of the founder. And the reason I say the founder is because even if you look at the history of Christianity, have there been Christians who have done things that are not good? Absolutely. Can't hide from it. Absolutely has happened. But if we look at the teachings of Jesus, is that what Jesus was teaching and telling us to do?
Right.
No, it wasn't. So there's not a per se connection between just because you believe in God doesn't mean you're going to do these violent things. Let's look at what is being taught. And as much as I applaud Reverend Vosper in the sense that she appears to be preaching love and all these things from the pulpit, on her atheism, I mean, my question is, if you're an atheist, if there is no God to define what love even means, what are you even talking about? And so there's a danger in her being an atheist.
Sounds very confusing for everyone involved.
Yeah, to say the least.
Very confusing.
But I think it's a lesson of us that we can take from that as well, as Christians, as far as, you got to put God first before any preacher, before any pastor, before anybody.
That's right.
All right, you want to do story number 3?
That's right. Tyler Trent, the Purdue Superfan, who has captured national attention over the past few months during his battle with a rare form of bone cancer, has passed away. Trent was first diagnosed with cancer while in high school in 2014 when he broke his arm during a game of ultimate frisbee. He was enrolled at Purdue for his freshman year but had to withdraw in September as his condition worsened. His bravery in face of his increasingly debilitating illness caught the attention of ESPN, which ran a story about him in October on the same day Purdue upset Ohio State, handing the Buckeyes their only loss of the season. Trent said the increased attention gave him the opportunity to not only share his story, but to share the love of Christ with thousands of people. It's really important just to take time every day to sacrifice your time to listen to other people, Trent said, because not only can they encourage you through their battles, through things that they're suffering through, but you can also encourage them just through taking time to listen to them. You never know what other people are going through. He described his faith in Jesus as his everything. As he explained to Sports Spectrum magazine, "Every morning I make sure to get in the Word. My faith is what keeps me going, honestly. I don't think I would be able to smile or have the happy face that people have seen on TV without my faith. Whether I wake up tomorrow or not, I know where I'm going to end up, and having that comfort and that peace is huge. I really don't know how anyone is able to fight a terminal illness without faith, honestly." Trent was 20 years old. That's such a sad story, and obviously, the loss of any young person at the prime of their life is tragedy. But, in these types of situations, he was able to use his situation to bring faith to other people, and having the publicity of the situation that he was going through, to use it as a platform to talk about his faith is wonderful, and God bless him.
And I'm big college football fan, so I've been watching bowl games and everything like that. And it wasn't just I didn't actually see the original ESPN story, and so I don't want to speak out of turn about that because I don't know. But I saw a lot of other networks talking about Tyler Trent and his inspirational story. I don't recall seeing until I read when we were getting ready for the show and I started looking through stories for the show. It was the first time, honestly, that I saw the part about his faith. And I don't want to speak out of turn. I didn't see the original story. It's entirely possible ESPN ran it. It does seem like the Sports Spectrum magazine ran it. Mm-hmm. But at least some of the other outlets that I watched kind of seemed to avoid,
as is usually the
angle.
case. But quite the opposite of our second story that we talked about. Here he is using this platform to loudly speak of his faith and share it with other people, which is the perfect platform, to do that kind of thing, even in the face of the hardship that he was experiencing.
And I think that's an example. Look, we're all going. I mean, I certainly pray that you're not going through something like Mr. Trent had to go through, but we all have troubles in our lives, and I think we can look to people like Tyler Trent, not to put anybody up on a pedestal, kind of like we said last time. God's always first, but we do have good examples of people in life that show that
courage.
Of courage, yeah.
Courage.
And where did he get his courage from? People always say, "Well, how can I be brave in something like this?" Well,
from his faith,
yeah,
from God. Absolutely.
From God. Now, I do have to say one quick apology about this story. I didn't realize till I was going through it. I'd forgotten. Hopefully, I don't know if Pastor Jay's watching this episode, but Pastor Jay, this was not a pot shot at Ohio State.
Of course not.
He's a big Buckeye fan, and I realized as we were looking through this, their one loss of the year that kept them out of the playoffs, and we're doing a story about the team that beat them.
I think that's great.
But hopefully, he's a pastor. He loves God. Forgiveness, and he can see the higher value in this story other than just the Ohio State loss. So.
I think it's great that at least some media attention was given to what he was trying to convey. As Christians, we always have to struggle, especially with the media climate nowadays of that being pushed aside. But I'm proud of him for sharing his story and proud of the media outlets that did share that part of his faith as well.
Well, especially because you're not covering the whole story. If you just cover the courage but don't cover where he's getting his discouraged from, then
That's
you're
right.
not giving people the whole story.
That's right.
So, and I think that's irresponsible from a media perspective, but that's just me. So, all right, well, thank you very much. Those are
You're
our 3
welcome.
stories for the day. Thank you very much for watching In the World. Every month on the second Wednesday of the month, we are here at 12 noon covering current events from a Christian perspective. Thank you, Jaime, for coming in.
Welcome.
Jaime was the
Thank
last
you,
minute she filled in. She was supposed to have this month off too, but
That's quite all right. I enjoyed it.
And thank you all for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. We'll see you next month. God bless. Hey, if you haven't joined our Patreon yet, would you mind giving it your prayerful consideration? Patreon is a way you can support the Trinity Joppa YouTube channel. We've got multiple tiers to choose from, starting as low as $2 per month. Visit www.patreon.com/TrinityJoppa for all the details. Thank you. God bless.